Instrument approach procedure charts are divided into various sections. You have the margin identification information in gray, the briefing strip information in green, the plan view information in yellow, the profile view information in pink, the airport sketch in purple, and landing minimums in light blue. First, let's talk about the margin identification information. The margin information is at the top, bottom, and sides of the charts and provides information about the location, the procedure information, and chart currency. Charts are organized by city first, then airport name and state, with the exception of military charts, which is organized by airport name. Going from the top of the chart, reading from left to right, and going down the chart, margin identification is organized in the following way. At the top and bottom of every chart is a city and state associated with this approach. In the top center is the approach and landing number, followed by the organization responsible for the procedure. In this case, it's the FAA. Next, you have the procedure title. The first part of the title comes from the type of nav aid that provides the final approach course guidance. Next tells you which runway to go to. If there are multiple parallel runways, left, right, or center will be abbreviated as L, R, or C. If it's one of multiple circling approaches, the procedure title will be appended with an alpha or bravo. Below the procedure title is the full airport name, and in parentheses, the identifier. In the top right is the date of last revision using the Julian calendar. The first two numbers identify the year, and the last three numbers identify the day of that year. In the side margins, you have the volume identification, followed by the issue date and the next issue date. In the bottom margin is the procedure amendment number, followed by the date that procedure amendment became active. If there is no amendment to the approach plate, original will be published at the bottom, followed by the original date of publication. Up next is the briefing strip information. Every briefing strip has a top, middle, and communications briefing strip. The top briefing strip is broken down into the primary procedure navigation information, final approach course information, and runway landing information. In the first box, the primary navigation type, whether it be a VOR, localizer, RNAV, or NDB, with its identifier and frequency channel will be displayed. If not required, the first box is removed. The second box shows the inbound approach course. The third box, stacked top to bottom, shows the runway landing distance, the touchdown zone elevation, and the airport elevation. Be aware that runway landing distance might not reflect the full runway length due to displaced threshold or shorter declared distances. The middle briefing strip typically contains three separate boxes. Those boxes are the note box, the approach lighting system box, and the missed approach procedure text box. The notes box can contain several different symbols. Some of these symbols include the treble T, inverse A and A, W, and cold temperature restricted airports. Next is the communication strip. This strip contains the frequencies needed to contact controlling agencies, as well as grab ATIS or contact ground or clearance delivery at a particular airport. Moving on down, we have the plan view. The plan view is a graphical depiction of the approach all the way from the initial approach through missed approach, and includes other visual depictions of the airfield, water, or terrain nearby. Every approach can be broken down into 5 different segments. First are the feeder routes, which are highlighted in blue. Feeder routes provide transition from the en route structure to the initial approach fix. Next is the initial approach, which is highlighted in yellow. The initial approach is the segment between the initial approach fix and the intermediate fix, or the point where the aircraft is established on the intermediate course or final approach course. Third is the intermediate approach, which is highlighted in yellow. The intermediate approach is the segment between the intermediate fix, which is annotated as IF on approach plates, and the final approach fix. Fourth is the final approach course, which is highlighted in red. The final approach course is a segment between the final approach fix and the runway, airport, or missed approach point. Finally, we have the missed approach course, which is highlighted in green. Missed approach begins at the missed approach point and continues until the designated fix or waypoint. Missed approach procedure track is shown as a hash marked line in the plan view. If the missed approach fix is outside of the area of the plan view, it will be shown in a separate box in the plan view. The plan view will also provide an indication of what nav aids will be used for that approach. Nav aids on ground-based charts will show the appropriate symbol accompanied by a data box that contains the facility name, frequency, identifier, and Morse code. If multiple nav aids are shown in the plan view, the primary nav aid, which is the nav aid that provides final approach course guidance, will have a heavy line around their box. Localizers are depicted using the following symbol. The size of the charted localizer symbol does not serve as an indication of the service volume. If the right side of the final approach course is shaded, that means it is the front course of the localizer frequency. If the left side of the final approach course localizer symbol is shaded, that means it is actually a back course localizer. Restrictive altitudes along the procedure track are shown as follows. Recommended altitudes are depicted with no lines above or below. A minimum altitude has the numbers with a line below it. A maximum altitude will show the numbers with the line above it. Mandatory altitudes have numbers with lines above and below. And mandatory block altitudes will have two numbers, with the top number being the maximum altitude and the bottom number being the minimum altitude. All altitudes that are shown along the route are considered mandatory altitudes. On the plan view, the primary airport will have all runways depicted to scale. Airports other than the primary approach airport may be shown with an airport pattern in the name when in close proximity to the primary airport. The plan view will depict terrain if the terrain exceeds 4,000 feet above the airport elevation, or if terrain within 6 nautical miles of the airport rises to at least 2,000 feet above the airport elevation. If terrain in the plan view meets that criteria, terrain will be charted by use of contours, spot elevations, and gradient tints of brown. The darker the brown tint, the higher the elevation of that terrain. Water features such as oceans, lakes, or significant rivers and streams will be depicted in gray. International borders will be depicted by a dashed line with the two countries on that border. Minimum safe altitudes will be depicted as follows. The minimum safe altitude provides 1,000 feet clearance above the highest obstacle within 25 nautical miles, or 2,000 foot clearance above the highest obstacle within mountainous areas. Military procedures can have emergency safe altitudes, which can extend that range to 100 nautical miles. Up next, particularly for RNAV approaches, are terminal arrival areas. Terminal arrival areas make controller's life a bit easier and can greatly simplify clearance. Once clear for the approach, pilots may descend to the minimum altitude depicted within their defined area, unless otherwise told by air traffic control. Now we move on to the profile view. The profile view gives a side-on depiction of the approach and provides valuable information as far as how to execute the approach. For precision approaches, the glide slope intercept altitude is illustrated by a zigzag line and an altitude. This is the minimum altitude for glide slope interception after completion of the procedure turn. Precision approach profiles also depict the glide slope angle descent, threshold crossing height, and the glide slope altitude at the outer marker or designated fix. For non-precision approaches, the final approach segment begins at the final approach fix and is depicted by a Maltese cross. If there's no final approach fix depicted, the final approach point is the point at which the aircraft is established inbound on the final approach course. A visual descent point is shown by a bold letter V. The VDP is the point where normal descent from the MDA to the runway touchdown point may be commenced. All precision approaches will note the glide slope for ILSs or the glide path for RNAV approaches. In addition to that, they will all have the threshold crossing height positioned in the lower half of the profile box. Missed approach icons will be depicted in the upper left to right hand corner of the profile box. Missed approach icons provide quick, at a glance, and intuitive guidance to the pilot to supplement the textual missed approach instructions in the briefing strip and the visual missed approach instructions in the plan view. If there's not enough space for the depiction of all missed approach icons, at least the first 4 icon boxes will be shown. Landing minimums is always published directly below the profile view. Landing minimums provide aircraft category information concerning the decision altitude or MDA, the height above touchdown, and finally the min weather to shoot that type of approach. Finally, we move on to the airport sketch. Airport sketch is always oriented to true north with the runways drawn to scale. Above the airport sketch will be the airport elevation and touchdown zone elevation. The airport elevation is the highest point of an airport's usable runways measured in feet above mean sea level. The touchdown zone elevation is the highest elevation in the first 3,000 feet of the landing surface. Circling only approaches will not show a touchdown zone elevation. An inverse D above the airport sketch indicates that declared distances are in effect for that runway. Beneath the airport sketch will be a time and distance table for non-precision approaches. This table provides the distance and time required from the final approach fix to the missed approach point for select ground speeds. Well, there you have it. You're now an expert in reading instrument approach procedure plates. If you enjoyed this video or know anybody that could definitely use this, please share it to them. Like, comment, subscribe, engage with us. And until next time, blue skies.